What is up, YouTube? I'm back, and in this video, we're going to be going through the main bosses from Elden Ring, and not including the DLC, because I don't want to be here all day, and I'm sure you don't either. And we're going to be ranking them on this tier list you see in front of you, from S tier being, in my opinion, the best bosses in the game based on their lore, based on the fight itself, based on the setting, the build-up, everything that goes into these fights, all the way down to D tier being the bosses that I think are just the worst. So, without wasting any more time, let's get started with Godrick. So, where do I get started with Godrick? Godrick is just a weak and pathetic character from a lore standpoint. He feels like he's weak and pathetic in the fight. It's probably one of, if not the easiest main boss in the entire game. He literally gets flamed by other NPCs all across the world. Like, they'll just be like, oh, Godrick, that guy's a joke. Rules over Stormvale Castle. It's not even his castle. This dude's a clown. They just be flaming him. They know he's a joke. You can figure out pretty quickly that he's a joke. The main boss you have to beat to get to Stormvale, Morgott, who is Morgott, and I'm sure all you know that by now. But anyway, is significantly harder than Godrick. The enemies just walking around in Stormvale are harder than Godrick. Like I said, he rules over a castle that's not even his. That's just absolutely pathetic. He grafts human limbs to himself because I don't know what he thinks is going to happen. He might think he's going to get stronger. Clearly hasn't worked. Just makes him look pretty disgusting. And yeah, that's really all there is to the grafting. It's just a really gross thing to do. He's just a gross person. He's clearly very, very greedy. He's clearly not mentally well. He's got some sort of weird superiority complex. He thinks he's like some really strong, powerful warrior, but in reality, like, he's so easy. Like I said, probably the easiest main boss. I have no idea how he's able to kill a dragon, like the one that he eventually rips his head off and uses against you in the fight. It doesn't make any sense to me. I feel like any of the open world dragons we fight would be able to fold him up, roll him up into a joint, and smoke him. Wouldn't be surprised if he wasn't even the one that killed this dragon. He just like scavenged it or had someone else do it for him. Wouldn't surprise me at all. Literally grafts this dragon head to his arm mid-fight. Just pretty cool. Honestly, it is pretty cool. And he just still remains like super weak and pathetic. So yeah, I think I've said enough. Godrick, weakest demigod, pathetic character, absolute bot, bum, whatever you want to call him. Godrick's going to the D tier. Alright, next up, we have a stark contrast to Godrick being Dragonlord Placidusax. Now, I absolutely love Dragonlord Placidusax. I typically don't like the larger bosses in the From Software games, but I am willing to make an exception here. I love that this boss is super hidden, hard to get to. You're basically not going to even know about it unless you look it up or see it online, which totally fine. I'm not one of those people that's like, you got to discover everything yourself, because like, what are we talking about? But anyway, love how hidden he is. I love the lore. It's pretty vague, admittedly, but he's literally the god of the old age, and he's hiding in a place beyond time, waiting for his lord to return. That's just so epic. It's awesome. And he literally just lies there dormant until you show up and you and him just throw down. I love the connection between him and Bale that is made in the DLC. Just love that rivalry going on. I think Bale's also a sick boss. I'd like to get to the DLC bosses in another video, but besides the point for now. And this fight itself is just awesome. I think it's probably the most cinematic fight in the game. I love the boss arena. It's really big, but at the same time, this boss kind of needs it to be that big. It's not like he runs from you the whole fight. He is very aggressive. Doesn't have too many long-range attacks, which I like, especially if you're going to make him moving around a lot. Make it seem like he's the one hunting you down, which I think they do in this fight, and I like that a lot, like I said. I love the red lightning attacks. I love the fire breath turning into the beams. I think that attack is sick. Does insane amount of damage. He literally will fly up and turn into a thundercloud with red lightning. So sick, like I said, so cinematic. It's awesome. And yeah, I just think this fight is just absolute peak. It's also, in my opinion, a very fair and reasonable fight, despite it initially feeling super difficult because of just how hard he hits. I think that once you figure out these attacks, they are pretty slow and telegraphed, and it does make it pretty fair in the end, in my opinion. It's definitely not an easy boss. Hits like a truck, but you can pick up on the things he does, you can kind of memorize it, and it becomes a fun fight. It also becomes reasonable. Definitely one of my favorites. I'm going to put him straight up into the S tier. Not really much of a question there for me. Next up, we have Rennala. So, from a lore standpoint, Rennala's like, alright. Radagon dips off and goes and meets up with Marika. She's all depressed, is what it is. She loses all her power, she loses motivation. I like that we get some lore, but it's not the coolest lore, obviously. I think it's important to realize that phase 2 of this fight is only possible thanks to Ranni's magic. Ranni's basically fully responsible for phase 2 of this fight, for basically allowing the Tarnished to experience Rennala at her peak, and in reality, she's just nowhere near this powerful anymore. She's fallen completely from this level. I think this fight's really easy once you pick up on her main attacks. The Comet Azure is the main one in the summons. They do hit pretty hard, but once you pick up on the attacks you really need to look out for, this fight just becomes a cakewalk, just straight up. I also just think that the children in Phase 1 throwing the books at you are just straight up weird and creepy. They, along with Rennala, seem completely helpless in Phase 1, and it just honestly makes me feel like a horrible person for just going around and hitting them. And yeah, that's where I'm going to leave that. So, Rennala, I do think it's pretty cool. Phase 2 is pretty cool, like cinematically. Lore's alright. I don't know, maybe this is a hot take. I'm not the biggest fan of Rennala. I'm going to put her in C tier. Definitely not on the level of Godrick, but definitely not one of my favorites either. Alright, next up we have Astel. I like the lead up to this fight. I like that it's basically locked behind Ranni's entire questline. I do enjoy Ranni's questline. I think it's one of the better ones in the game. I think most people would agree with that. Love exploring all the underground areas. It's just a different vibe than the overworld. I like how he appears in some of these underground areas, just slinging rocks at you and kind of foreshadowing the fight. Although, I will admit, this is pretty obnoxious at times, just getting pelted with a spray of rocks from hundreds of feet away. Definitely caused me to crash out a few times, I'm not going to lie. I like the boss arena in this one. I think it's just very aesthetically pleasing. I actually think they did a great job with his design as well. He's obviously meant to be an alien, and he looks like an alien. He looks just totally weird. At least some of these other bosses, like the majority of them, resemble some sort of earthly being. At least like a little bit, but Astel just looks creepy and weird, unsettling, whatever you want to call it. He looks like an alien. He is genuinely unsettling to look at. And I think that's the point. I think they did a great job with this design. I think the fight's pretty solid. It's definitely not a top tier fight, in my opinion. I love the big meteor attack. I just think it looks epic. It's awesome. Like I said when I was ranking Placidusax a minute ago, I generally don't love the large bosses. This is a fight where I think that does come into play with the camera angles just being... The camera just gets manipulated in a weird way, and it's kind of annoying. And I think that's a pretty consensus opinion. Maybe I'm wrong, I don't know. But overall, it's solid. There's nothing that really blows me away with Astel, but I do like the fight. I'm going to put it an A. Okay, next up we have Godfrey. So I think you could probably guess where I'm going to put Godfrey. Yes, I'm going to glaze him a little bit. Just prepare yourself. The lore for Godfrey is absolutely peak. He loses his grace after literally conquering all of America's opposition and the Greater Will's opposition in the lands between. The reason he loses his grace is because that is literally his purpose. He is there to be a warrior. He is there to conquer and battle and win these fights. And he's just so good at it that it gets to a point where he has no other opposition, and therefore he just loses his purpose. And I just think that's pretty sick. It's just laid out nice and clear. Great lore. I love it. Banished for that reason. He returns, and I don't know if this is explicitly stated. It probably is, because you become the opposition to the Greater Will, and he is recalled, he regains his grace, and he's able to return, which, again, just peak lore. I love that. Opening cutscene of this fight with him holding his son Morgott, as Morgott slowly just fades away, is both sad and awesome at the same time, because, it's a tough moment for him, but at the same time, I like to see Morgott getting shown some respect, because he's not often shown respect in the lore, as most of you probably know. I think Siraj is an awesome addition to his character. I think that the fact that he seals away like the primal, unhinged warrior side of Godfrey, I love that. I love that he has to sacrifice Siraj to start Phase 2, just literally ripping him clean off his back, creating a bloody mess, and reverting back to the primal warrior that he once was. I absolutely love this cutscene. It's one of my favorite cutscenes in the entire game. And the fight itself is also just awesome. I think very challenging. He hits very hard. The first phase, at least, you can kind of get the rhythm down, and it can become very manageable. And the second phase is just completely brutal and chaotic, which is just so fitting to the character, and I love it. And yeah, all that being said, he's an S tier boss. He's a top tier boss. I love Godfrey. Next up, we have Mohg. So Mohg's another character that has great lore. In the main game, the lore is left kind of vague. It's not even left vague, it's just deceiving that he stole away Miquella for himself because he had like affection for Miquella, painting him out to be the bad guy. But in the DLC, we learn that Miquella is the one that is manipulating him, which is a pretty big plot twist, obviously. He manipulates him to the point where Miquella literally sets him up to get killed by the Tarnished, so that Miquella can then use his godly body to bring back Radahn and have Radahn be his consort, because obviously Radahn, at his peak, was stronger than Mohg. And this is just absolutely diabolical planning by Miquella. It makes Mohg a pretty sad character that he was essentially charmed by Miquella, mind controlled, and forced to go out like this. Because he does seem like a pretty cool leader, and it seems like everyone that follows his faction, that follows his cause, does respect him. And yeah, that's the lore on Mohg. Similar to Morgott, he was banished into the sewers because of his Omen appearance, and he kind of just found his own purpose, which you gotta respect it. I think the boss arena and the surrounding area for this fight is just awesome. Particularly the boss arena, one of my favorites in the whole game. It just, like I said, it's awesome. And the fight is also pretty cool, I think. The second phase in particular, where he sprouts these dark wings. I just love it. With all that being said, I think he's a great boss overall. There's just nothing that really blows me away about Mohg and the Mohg boss fight to the point where I feel like obligated to put him in S tier, but I like Mohg a lot. I think it's solid. I think it's a fair fight. I think it's fun. I'm going to put him in A tier. Alright, next up we have Malenia. So the Halo tree is both one of my least favorite areas in the game and favorite areas in the game at the same time. I think there are some parts of it that are just totally obnoxious, with just like the absolute spam coming at you. While there are other parts that I genuinely really enjoy going through. I think that Malenia's lore is pretty cool. It's sad that she is seemingly another victim of Miquella's deceit, waiting for him to return, when in reality he just doesn't really seem to care about her, whereas she clearly cares about him. This is one of my favorite boss arenas in the whole game. I just love how the flower field and the throne that she sits on, it's not really overblown and it's not super cinematic. It's pretty simplistic, but I think that's what makes it great. It just seems very fitting of almost like the duel you're having with her. I like Phase 2. I like the cutscene that transitions to Phase 2. I know I'm not the only person that just absolutely shit their pants when they realize that she has a Phase 2 after spending 400 tries to beat Phase 1. I know I'm not the only person who experienced that. I remember beating Phase 1, getting super hyped, thinking let's go, I just did it after all that time, just for her to transition into Phase 2. And I was just given the 1,000-yard stare at my monitor. I was completely distraught, depressed, whatever you want to call it. Not a good experience, but at the same time, I do think that this fight is fair. It's obviously extremely tough. The lifesteal is a huge problem to deal with. She's very fast, very aggressive. But aside from the waterfowl dance, I don't think there's any particular attack that she does that I would just say is complete bullshit. Even the waterfowl dance, it is pretty bullshit, to be honest. I know there's a way to dodge it, rolling into it. But after probably thousands of attempts on the fight at this point, I still haven't gotten very good at it. But besides the point, I do think, obviously this fight's meant to be very, very hard, but it is, at least to an extent, reasonable. All that being said, the only thing I have against Malenia is what she did to Radahn in the lore, just setting off the Scarlet Rot Bomb, whatever you want to call it, the big flower blooming, essentially reducing Radahn to a soulless husk of his former self, turning Caelid into an absolute disgusting wasteland. Radahn didn't deserve that. This is a scumbag move to just do that. Not only to Radahn, but an entire land that was flourishing, just turning it into a disgusting, rot-filled wasteland. Probably one of the worst things any character has done in the lore of this game. I know there's a lot of terrible things, I know that. But what she did to Radahn was very, very just devious and diabolical behavior. And because of that, I can't bring myself to put her in S tier. Maybe that's a hot take. I'll put her in A tier because of everything else I said. I do like this boss as a whole. But she's a terrible person. I can't really frame it any differently than that. An honorable warrior like Radahn would have never done something like that. Maybe you disagree, but it's just the truth. I'm sorry. Alright, next up we have Malekith. I love this boss fight. I think the lore is awesome. He's essentially just sealed away the very idea of death within himself, within the core of his being. And he is hiding in Fair Missoula, which is pretty much a space that is beyond time, extremely hard to access. And he hides here, preserving the Rune of Death in order to keep America's rule and her order safe. So obviously very loyal to America, very loyal to his cause. And I just think it's awesome. Great lore. Everything surrounding this fight is also great in my opinion. Like I said, Fair Missoula is just a great area. I like the fact that you can do the Beast Clergyman's quest line in Caelid and get introduced to the character almost without even knowing it. I love the small detail that if you complete this quest line prior to fighting Malekith, I guess prior to fighting the Beast Clergyman in Phase 1, he will recognize you. I just love that small detail. I love small details like that they've put into this game. It's stuff like that that really makes FromSoft just incredible. Great company. But anyway, I think that the transition into Phase 2 in this boss fight is absolutely incredible. It's my favorite cutscene and Phase 2 transition in the entire game because the reveal of what is hiding under the outfit of the Beast Clergyman is just so cool. I love it. I love this boss design, if you can't tell already. I love how he just yanks the sword out literally from within his body through that like rune thing he has on his hand. I don't know, this dude just got so much aura. It's so cool. And I'm just glazing at this point, but I absolutely love Malekith. You know where I'm going to put him on this tier list already, but a few more things. He's very challenging at first. He's very fast and aggressive, but I think this is also a very fair fight. Once you get the moves down, it becomes really manageable. Obviously very punishing to get hit with the death and death effects. He hits hard in general, but like most bosses in this game, it's all patterns, and once you get these patterns down, it does become very fair and reasonable and fun, in my opinion. So yeah, with all that being said, great boss, one of my favorites in the whole game. He's going S tier. Alright, next up we have Radagon, and let me just say this real quick. I'm going to be ranking Radagon and Elden Beast separately because I have vastly different opinions on the two, and I know that technically it's one boss fight with two phases, but I don't care. I'm ranking them differently. Radagon's lore is sick. The eventual reveal that Marika and Radagon have either fused into one body or have always been the same being is just a pretty cool twist. I don't really know what we're supposed to do with that information as the player because they don't really elaborate on it too much. But it's pretty cool nonetheless, and it's surprising. And it just adds like the weird, almost unexplainable lore that this game demonstrates at times. I really like the boss arena and the boss design. There's nothing really specific about them that I could point out and be like, this is great, this is perfect. But I just find it really fitting, and I just like it. I love the fog in the back. And I honestly think the simplicity of this boss arena is what makes it so good in my opinion, because Radagon himself is the cinematic aspect of this fight. I love the hammer attacks. I think they look sick. They're awesome. They're fairly telegraphed, but at the same time, very, very punishing if you get greedy, try to get a few extra hits in. You will get smashed with the hammer. It does a shit ton of damage. And I love how he will literally walk at you and start aura farming, just walking straight towards you, not even trying to attack. But then if you try to throw any sort of projectile spell at him, he just deflects it straight back at you. It just, unlimited aura for this guy. He's awesome. Definitely another one of my favorite fights. I'm putting Radagon in S tier. Alright, I think now, just because we just discussed Radagon, I'm going to move straight to Elden Beast, even though he's not the next one on the list, just to get it out of the way. This might be a hot take. I can't stand this fight at all, the Elden Beast. I can't stand it. I wish they just gave Radagon like a jacked up phase 2, or made him transition into Marika or something, and gave Marika the phase 2 of Radagon. Something like that. Because, like I just said, I cannot stand the Elden Beast. I do find the lore interesting and the design pretty cool. Looks pretty alien. Strange in comparison to anything else we fought to this point in the game. I like the idea that it's a manifestation of basically a godlike force being the greater will. But this alone can't just make me like the boss just because the lore and the story behind it's pretty cool. Because I just hate this boss fight. Maybe I just suck at it. Maybe this is a hot take. I think some of you will agree. He just runs around the whole fight. The boss arena is way too big and it needs to be smaller. He skirts around. He spams annoying projectile attacks. Don't even get me started on the Elden Stars. That is completely bullshit and a completely obnoxious attack. Nothing fun about it. And yeah, I don't know. That's just it. It's mainly the fact that he moves around so much and just spams range attacks. It's so annoying. It just really pisses me off. I don't know. I think they missed on the final boss of Elden Ring, to be honest. Like I said, Radagon jacked up phase 2. Marika is phase 2 of Radagon. They could have given us something else, and I think it would have gone over better with the fan base. Maybe I'm reaching. Maybe I suck at the fight, like I said. I really don't like Elden Beast. Really don't like it. I'm putting it in D tier. I don't care. I know most people are probably going to be pissed about that. Alright, moving on. Morgott. I love Morgott from a lore perspective. He's cast away by his own family to live in the sewers, which is insane that Marika wanted to do that to her child just because he was ugly. Insane. Nonetheless, he still chooses to die fighting for her cause and protecting the greater will and the Erd Tree, despite how poorly he was treated by his family, which is extremely honorable, extremely respectable. He is the tarnished single biggest op in the game. I don't think that's debatable. He literally says the word tarnished like it's a slur. He'll be like, witless, tarnished. It's literally just like it's a slur. He's just throwing it out at you. He does not have any respect for you as a character. You have 3 total options to fight him, obviously one being on the bridge before Stormville, one being on the outskirts of the capital, and then one being the main fight at the foot of the Erd Tree. So he's just out to get you, just straight up. He hates that you exist, he hates your goal, he hates that you're coming for his order, and he wants you gone. And you can't really blame him for it, but it is what it is. I like the boss arena at the base of the Erd Tree. It's not my favorite boss arena, but it's cool. It's a good one. And the fight itself is overall, again, pretty cool. Not my favorite, but it is pretty cool. I love like the rain of the swords attack. I think that although his delayed attacks can be super annoying at times, it is a fair fight. It is reasonable. It's not overly difficult. Again, not the most fun, not the coolest fight, not the coolest boss arena. I do really like his lore. I think it's some of the best lore in the game. But yeah, overall solid boss. Nothing that really blows me away, like I said with Mohg. But yeah, solid boss. I'm going to put him in A tier, right along with Mohg. Alright, next up we have Radahn. I love Radahn. I love the build-up. I love the Radahn Festival. I think the fight is awesome. One of my favorites in the whole game. I like the fact that there are the pre-play summons that can kind of make this feel like a raid fight if you are at a pretty low level and you're not very good at the game like me and you just be getting stomped if you try to do it by yourself. His meteor attack where he flies up is one of the single coolest attacks in the entire game. And he's just also an incredible character from the lore perspective. He's an immensely powerful warrior. He has the utmost respect for Godfrey. He wants to be a warrior like Godfrey. Takes time to learn magic. He takes time to literally learn gravity magic so he doesn't crush his horse because he grows so big that he otherwise would just flatten him. Pretty wholesome. Seems like a really cool guy. Seems like all of his men really respect him. You can see that through the Radahn Festival. You can see that just through all the dialogue about him throughout the entire game. I just love the idea that you as the player are tasked with giving him his warrior's death that he deserves, because the reality is that's really no longer his soul in that body. It's just like a zombified corpse and the last of what remains of a once incredible warrior. And he does deserve a warrior's death. Because of all that lore, it almost feels like you're doing him a favor taking him out in the end. And that the original Radahn, when he was fully in control of his body, when he was at his peak, would respect you for it. That's something I found really cool. So yeah, this is just an absolute banger boss fight. The arena itself, too, is just awesome. The Wailing Dunes. I love it. And kind of like the opposite of what I said for Elden Beast, it's a huge boss arena. I love the Wailing Dunes. Sick boss arena. Very cinematic. Very aesthetically pleasing. The fight in general is super fun. And the reason I'm okay with a huge boss arena for a fight like this is because of how aggressive he is and how melee heavy he is, as opposed to Elden Beast just running around and spamming range attacks. So yeah, I think Radahn's another easy S tier. Alright, we got 3 more. We're going to start with Fire Giants. I think the Fire Giant's pretty cool. He's got some sick lore. He's essentially the vessel for his own god, and also the last of his race. The Giants were obviously wiped out in their war against the Erdtree, and the god of his race, I think they call it the Fell God. I don't think that's what it's actually called. I think that's just what they call it in the lore, because they've kind of like banished it and sealed it away after defeating it. But they basically forcefully seal it away within the Fire Giant, which is pretty diabolical and pretty fucked up. But anyway, pretty cool lore. The arena itself is pretty cool at the very peak of the mountaintops. You can obviously see the forge in the background. You can see the Erdtree in the background. I like it a lot. I like this arena. Like I just said with Radahn, it's a huge arena, but because he's so aggressive and melee heavy, at least in the first phase, it's not as much of a problem. But with that being said, the fight itself does seem a little bit gimmicky. It does feel a little bit gimmicky, obviously, because you basically have to attack the one weak point on his ankle or else you're just cooked. Which, it's not necessarily a gimmick as much as like Rykard, who we'll talk about in a second, but it does feel a little bit gimmicky, is basically what I'm getting at. And phase 2 can be pretty obnoxious because he is constantly just rolling around and spamming AoE attacks, not necessarily trying to form distance between you and him like the Elden Beast would do, but just the constant movement, the constant having to like sprint around the arena on torrent to catch up to him and actually deal some damage, and having to worry about AoE attacks at the same time makes this definitely not one of the most fun fights in the game. It's not terrible, but it's not one of the most fun. And yeah, I think it's overall, Fire Giant's pretty cool, but he's not on the same level as some of these others. I'm going to put him in the B tier. Alright, next up we have Rykard. I think the lead up to this fight's really cool. I like that we slowly learn about Rykard and how he was once some great leader and he just slowly descends into this power-hungry kind of lunatic who has less and less regard for those who serve him. I like how we're at first told that he's consumed by the Serpent, and then we don't even learn until phase 2 of his fight that he essentially has become the Serpent. And I think that cutscene's awesome. That's a pretty cool reveal. Blasphemous Blade is disgusting. The fact that so many people have been sacrificed to give him this level of power. Very dark, pretty disturbing. It's kind of like Godrick, but he's actually has become pretty powerful, whereas Godrick's just super pathetic and just sacrifices people for the hell of it. It's insane to me that Mount Gelmir as a whole is completely optional. And you could say that about a lot of these bosses, but Mount Gelmir in particular is like a good like eighth of the overworld map, which is just crazy that it's optional. I think it's pretty cool. And again, that's another thing that just makes these games awesome. They don't shove anything down your throat. They leave it all at your fingertips to go explore as you please. I love that about Elden Ring, and I think most people would agree. Anyway, the boss arena is pretty cool. Fight's very cinematic, very cool. But admittedly, I'm not a very big fan of gimmick fights. Like I said, this fight's cool, but I don't even remember what the weapon's called, to be honest, because it's basically useless outside of this fight. But the spear that you used for those like big wind attacks that you basically have to use in order to beat him, or you can just spam sorceries. But the gimmick for this fight makes it very easy, in my opinion, and that does take something away from it, because the reality is you're probably only going to be spending like somewhere between 2 and 5 attempts to beat this, because if you just spam the Ash of War on the weapon that you're given to beat him at the boss entrance, you can fuck him up pretty quick. And if you disagree with that, I don't know what to tell you, because I'm not even very good at this game, and I find this boss super easy. And because of that, and despite the cool lore, the cool lead up, I'm only going to put Rykard in the B tier right next to Fire Giant, because it is a gimmick fight, and I'm not a huge fan of gimmick fights. I think they could have done it a little bit differently, but pretty cool nonetheless. Alright, last one we have Lichdragon Fortissax. So this is another boss that has some complete top tier lore behind him. He stays by Godwin's side, even long after Godwin's soul has seemingly just left him completely, and he is fully willing to just rot away alongside him, which is just absolute top-notch loyalty. You can't help but respect it. You can't help but feel for him. I think the quest line that you have to do in the lead up to this fight is alright. It's not one of my favorites. It can seem somewhat tedious at times. It's not a bad quest line. It's definitely interesting to learn more of the lore on Godwin. But like I said, I don't know. I'm just not a huge fan of this quest line. It's not super memorable for me. Maybe I'm forgetting something with that point, but I think the boss arena is really cool. Looks great. Godwin's huge husk corpse thing in the back only adds to it. Adds to the emotional appeal of this fight, of the questline as well. The fight itself, while I think it's very cool cinematically, it kind of just feels like another Ancient Dragon fight with a few extra attacks mixed in, and also the addition of the Death Lightning in the place of the Red Lightning. And because of this, and despite me really liking the lore of this character, I can't bring myself to rate him too highly, because again, it does really just feel like another Ancient Dragon. Not really copy and pasted, but no, honestly, kind of copy and pasted with some other attacks and a different cinematic effect thrown in. And I'm not really afraid to say that, because I think that is kind of apparent after you fought him a few times. But still fun, still very cool, especially from a lore standpoint, so I'm going to put him in the B tier. Alright, that's going to do it for my Elden Ring boss tier list, not including the DLC. I'd love to do another video just like this one for the main bosses in the DLC. Make sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed, and I will see you very soon. Goodbye.